Here is the situation. When something becomes cheap enough to win, actually, nobody wins. For decades, China's rise seemed unstoppable. Consider that this place was the factory of the world, built on an efficiency so ruthless it seemed like an art form. Cities never slept, and assembly lines glowed through the night. Prices dropped like clockwork, year after year, until Western competitors simply gave up trying. This was the miracle of scale, discipline, and planning, a civilization turning human labor into economic horsepower. But every miracle hides a cost, and China's greatest strength, its ability to make everything cheaper, faster, and bigger, has ironically become the very thing pulling it down. China's story is essentially the story of modern capitalism stretched to its breaking point, a system that rewards growth at all costs, even when those costs destroy the future. It depends on what happens when the world's largest economy optimizes itself into exhaustion, when efficiency becomes self-destruction. The beginning, getting rich, is patriotic. To understand this, we must go back to 1978, the beginning of the Chinese economic miracle. Deng Xiaoping stood before the Communist Party and broke one of socialism's deepest taboos. He told China, getting rich was not shameful, it was patriotic. With that, he unleashed one of the fastest economic transformations the world had ever seen. Peasants became entrepreneurs, and the countryside turned into factories. Foreign investors, from Japan, the US to UN Europe, saw a gold mine. Cheap labor, endless manpower, and a government eager to make deals, China opened special economic zones, small test cities where the rules were different. There was no central planning or bureaucratic drag. The sole goal was to attract capital and create exports. This tactic worked too well. Shenzhen, a sleepy fishing town of 30,000 people, exploded into a metropolis of millions. The formula spread and every local government wanted its own boom, the race to the bottom and involution. Local governments borrowed and built highways, power plants, and industrial parks to lure more factories. By the early 2000s, China was devouring the world's demand for everything, from steel to oil. If something could be manufactured, it would eventually be made in China. But the dangerous incentive underlying this rise was that success meant being cheaper than everyone else. Local governments competed for factories by cutting land prices, taxes, and wages. Firms cut margins, quality, and profits. Everyone chased growth, but no one chased sustainability. It was clearly a race to the bottom disguised as progress. Western consumers got their miracle, the $5 t-shirt, the $300 iPhone, and the illusion of abundance without inflation. And China got rich. However, the system started to overheat. The miracle became an addiction. Local governments, needing growth to pay back their loans, built even more. By 2015, China's steel capacity alone was more than the rest of the world combined. Prices began to fall, not because of innovation, but because of desperation. Factories didn't slow down when profits disappeared. They accelerated, hoping volume could make up for the loss. It didn't. That's when the new phrase emerged. Involution, internal curling regression. Involution is not just about people working harder for less. It's about companies producing more for less, competition that stops being about innovation and becomes entirely about survival. Entire sectors are locked in a zero-sum war for market share, where the only weapon left is price. Solar panels, electric vehicles, EVs, and batteries, symbols of China's new economy, became the battleground firms, many state-backed, flooded markets, and slashed prices to underbid the next. Margins vanished, but nobody dared stop, because in a system where output equals legitimacy, losing production means losing face. This cycle feeds itself. Profits collapse, and wages stall. Consumers cheer until they realize cheap abundance comes at the cost of prosperity. China has entered an era of industrial involution, a self-destructive loop where efficiency devours profit. It is now purely a race to the bottom. The consequences and capitalism eating itself. This is why Chinese solar panels are sold below cost, why EVs pile up in lots, and why, despite record exports, industrial profits fell by over 20% in 2024. When everyone competes to be the cheapest, price is the only thing left that can fall. This is not capitalism in overdrive, it's capitalism eating itself. The irony is that not all of this is a mistake. Some of it is by design. The Chinese government has mastered the art of weaponized efficiency, using subsidies to keep key industries alive long enough to crush global competition. It is not about quarterly profit, it's about strategic monopoly. Beijing does not mind short-term losses, it wants control of the future. Local governments pour billions into factories so companies can sell below cost, not to survive, but to eliminate rivals. The ruthless logic is, flood the market, undercut everyone, and wait Western rivals, bound by short-term profit demands, cannot keep up and fold. Once the global supply chain depends on China, they can dictate terms and dominate the value chain. This playbook was used before, with steel and shipbuilding, but this time the scale is unprecedented. These are the materials of the future: lithium batteries and EV drivetrains, the arteries of the 21st century economy. While this strategy seems genius in theory, it is fragile in practice. When every sector expects government support, efficiency turns into an addiction. Price wars are not just economic battles, they are fiscal time bombs. The collapse of purpose domination built on loss is not victory, it's deferred collapse. An empire is not killed by a collapse of demand, it's killed by a collapse of purpose. Here, purpose has been replaced by momentum, a system that cannot afford to slow down because every level depends on motion. Local governments need factories running to service debt, banks need them borrowing, and the central government needs them working to maintain the illusion of full employment. Everyone pretends that more output equals more prosperity, even when it no longer does. This is the political logic of state capitalism. Production is proof of control. The solution to every imbalance is more of the same imbalance. China's economy is an engine of legitimacy. The paradox is brutal. Overproduction keeps worldwide inflation low, but simultaneously depresses China's own wages and demand, losing balance. History shows this pattern is as old as empires. Britain, Japan, and even Rome faced this trap. Rome's downfall began not with invasion, but with overproduction that collapsed prices and bankrupted its farmers. Every empire that masters efficiency eventually faces the test. Can it stop optimizing long enough to survive? China's leaders talk about rebalancing, shifting from investment-led growth to consumption. But time is the one resource a growth-addicted system lacks. Provinces keep building more factories because their incentives demand it. It's like trying to diet while the kitchen keeps cooking. China's problem is not too little productivity, it's too much. The very force that made China rich, relentless competition, now ensures no one can rest long enough to stay rich. This is industrial involution. China is learning that nothing is more expensive than being too cheap. Because when a system optimizes everything except balance, eventually the only thing left to destroy is itself.